and welcome back to Biblical Theology, Exegesis, and Hermeneutics, where meaning is always context-driven. I'm your host, John Strazisich. Okay, then coming to here today, we began here at 9:1, and today we'll be looking at verses 1 through 6. And unfortunately, the Aleppo Codex did not survive this part of Amos, so we're picking up here in the Lelengrandensis. And it says, Ra'iti et Adonai nitzav al hamizbeach vayomer hak hakaftor v'yir ashu hasipim uvitza'am berosh kulam v'acharitam Bacherev herog lo yanus lahem nas velo yimalet lahem palit. And we'll stop here before we go into the conditional sentences. Okay, so then we'll offer up our translation here from 9:1. I saw the Lord standing beside the altar, and he said, strike the capital so that the thresholds might shake, and cut them off on the head of all of them, and the latter part of them I shall slay with the sword. The one who flees of them shall not flee, and the survivor of them shall not escape. And we're stopping there before we go into these conditional clauses. But that's our translation. Okay, so coming here, we will let Shalom Paul once again set the table for us. The fifth vision differs from the previous four in several aspects. The Lord does not make the prophet see here ani. Remember, this here is the hifil form of ra'ah, to see, and in our passage it just says ra'iti, I saw, which is the simple cow active. So the causation of the vision in the fifth part is not mentioned. It's just simply Amos's own ability that he sees the Lord in this particular fashion. So we'll begin from the beginning once again. The fifth vision differs from the previous four in several aspects. The Lord does not make the prophet see. No object bearing a symbolic significance is present. No dialogue takes place between the deity and Amos, but only one extended monologue in which the Lord issues a command and then proceeds to delineate its devastating consequences. The fifth vision, moreover, constitutes the climactic conclusion of the prior four. Whereas the fourth announced the end of Israel, the fifth describes the coup de grace in minute detail, whereas the third and fourth pertain to the inalterability of destruction. The final vision adds the dimension of the absolute inescapability of the forthcoming disaster. The vision centers about the altar, most likely the one located in the main shrine of Beth-El. The presence of the deity at this sacred site would lead one initially to anticipate a favorable reaction to the cultic proceedings, indicating that the offerings upon the altar were favorably accepted. Yet Amos, once again, in his penchant for paradox and surprise, turns the table on his audience by overturning the altar. The Lord's presence now is a guarantee not of protection but of destruction. The cultic shrine and the worshipers are the objects of God's wrath, and both are destined for annihilation. So we need to say something here. The reason why they're destined for for destruction is because Yahweh said there's only one altar, on which he will accept sacrifices, and that is at Jerusalem. So the nation here, since, Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, at the break of the nation back, what was it, 931-ish, somewhere around this time, is, after Solomon's death, when Rehoboam and Jeroboam then, reigned respectively over the south and Jeroboam over the north. So Rehoboam continued, the Solomonic dynasty, the Davidic dynasty, and then, but 10 tribes were given to Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and ever since 931, the north has been basically a Yahweh cult. They're a false worship center, and they've instituted idolatry, which is the very first commandment: you have no other gods before me. So Yahweh saw fit that this place was destined for destruction, and it all starts at the cultic shrine of Beth-El. This is where the sin began, and this is God, Yahweh's going to punish it, and it's where it's going to start. Okay, then when we come here, we now come here to point B. We've covered chapters 7 and 8 here. Point A here, Amos's first four autobiographical visions. So now we're on Amos's fifth autobiographical vision. And we've entitled this Yahweh's Call for the Destruction of the Beth-El temple cult, with appended oracles of judgment and salvation. And so what we're going to be looking at here today is the fifth auditory vision, Yahweh's call for the destruction of the temple and its congregants. And this is going to be looking at verses 1 to 6. And then next time we will look here at the oracles of judgment and salvation. And this is the fall of the Beth-El temple cult and the rise of the house of David. And that's going to take up, 7 to 15. And so from 7 to 10, we have the oracle of judgment against the fall of Beth-El. And then in 11 to 15, it'll be the oracle of salvation concerning the rise of the house of David. Okay, then moving right along here, we come here to this point here, point 1, Amos's fifth vision, Yahweh's call for the destruction of the Beth-El temple cult and its congregants, verses 1 to 6. And then we're going to be looking, concentrating here on verses 1 to 4. And so this is this auditory vision, and it concerns the inescapability of judgment on the Beth-El temple and its congregants. And then we have here in verse 1a alpha here the introductory visionary report. Ra'iti et Adonai nitzav al ha-mizbeach. Okay, so this is the introductory visionary report. It's just Yahweh standing by the altar, and it's a report that I saw. So this is it's autobiographical for Amos, and so he's just recording what he saw, and so this is the introduction to the visionary report. Then the auditory report begins here. This is we're going to say this is verse 1a alpha, ending here at the Revia, and then we'll pick it up here with Vayomer, and this is then going to pick up the auditory report Okay, and then he's going to then tell us what he heard Yahweh saying after he first saw him standing by the altar. So we have so it takes up conceptually. You can understand there's the introductory visionary report and then the auditory report, and then it begins here with Vayomer. So this is the speech reporting formula, okay, and then there's this command: strike the altar. So this is the initial command: strike the capital. Hakaftor here, strike the capital, so that the thresholds might shake. And we have a purpose clause after you have, a lot of times after you have a command then followed by a vav consecutive, this can end up being a purpose clause. And so for here, it certainly does. So now, who exactly is Yahweh speaking to? If it's Amos, then he would have to, do this in the vision itself, so it would be somewhat symbolic, if that is how it happens here, because Yahweh is obviously commanding somebody to strike. And then but however it takes place in real life, a lot of scholars here would refer to, go back to chapter 1 verse 1, where Amos's his words were reported 2 years before the earthquake. So Yahweh could have commanded an angelic one of his angels who would have charge over earthquakes, and don't laugh at that. I mean, remember you have, in Book of Revelation chapter 7, you have, there are angels that are stationed over the earth, to control the four winds of the heavens, okay, from its four corners. So so it's not that big of a grasp to understand here. You got to remember, you have to interpret this from the world of Amos, and how this could be understood by him and his contemporaries, and what I'm saying would be perfectly logical underneath that particular world view, and it should also likewise be adopted by us. So there's this command to strike the capital, that is the head of the column, and so that the thresholds would shake. So the thresholds, this would be the stones that are underneath the doorway of the supposedly here of the Beth-El temple, and so if it was struck up top, then it would shake the bottom, and then it would then obviously then those who were inside would come fleeing out. And then the further command here that we have is that Yahweh now says, strike or cut them off on the head of all of them. So he's commanding somebody here to strike them on the head of all the congregants, and then get this, here's then the follow-up, and I shall, and it says, I shall kill with the sword the rest of them. That would probably be a permissible way of interpreting acharitam here, the last part of them. So they have to initially strike and cut off the head of all the congregants who are running out of the temple and then those who are left Yahweh will kill by the sword. I mean, this is this is total destruction. This is what God had warned Israel in Deuteronomy chapter 28, that if they broke the covenant, then Yahweh would destroy them. And this here is obviously carrying out the covenant curses that were called down. And then here, notice here in that we have this next distic here that would of synonymous parallelism. The one who flees of them shall not flee, and the one who survives of them shall not escape. Now notice how this goes. The one who flees, so it begins that initially the people are trying to escape and flee and run away, and then it says that none of those who flee shall basically escape. And now note here further, now the one who survives. So now you're talking about an actual person who fled and managed somehow to escape the initial. He's a survivor. But even those who survive fleeing, leaving, fleeing the temple, eventually they're not going to be able to escape. They may be able to last a day or two, but they ultimately are not going to escape, but are going to suffer death. And this results in the inescapability of judgment. There will be no escapees nor survivors. That's what's going on. And then when we come down here to verses 2 to 4, we have these 5 conditional sentences of the inescapability of Yahweh's judgment. And we have these who, those who, try to, if they dig down into Sheol, from there, Yahweh, will get them. So you have digging down, and then if they try to go up to heaven, then from there I'll bring them down. So these are merisms. This is from height and depth. If they try to hide from Yahweh going down, or versus trying to ascend to heaven, if they it doesn't matter how far they dig down, nor how far they go up into the earth, or into the heavens, they can't escape. And then this continues with the topography of the land. If now if they try to hide themselves in the top of Carmel, and I think Carmel is this mountain there is like 1,500 feet, comes straight up out of the ocean. This is where Elijah confronted Ahab and the 450 prophets of Baal. And so the top of Carmel is right on the ocean, and it has a commanding height that comes straight up out of the ocean. So if they try to hide up there, Yahweh will take them. And then it says if they hide it on the bottom of the seafloor. So again, we have another height and depth here. Within the habitable part of the earth, the top of Carmel, or trying to go to the bottom of the sea. And there, if they go down there, then Yahweh will command the serpent to bite them. So this is basically, there is no escape from Yahweh, and these are merisms. It stands for the totality of something, and so here it's for height and depth, one from hell up to heaven, and then for us earth dwellers, whether it's the top of Carmel or at the bottom of the ocean, that where I guess one could go to a certain depth to the bottom of the sea, one could flee and hide, but it's not going to last. And note here that this is comprehensive. Yahweh is doing, there's going to be no one who survives. They're worshiping at Beth-El and offering sacrifices on a pagan altar that is not acceptable to Yahweh, and they're worshiping with idols. Well, of course He's going to destroy them, and this is the judgment for them. They were repeatedly told, beginning with the Ten Commandments, starting with Moses, and then all the prophets. And then lastly, in verse 4 here, then these merisms stop. If they go into captivity, from before their enemy, from there I will command the sword, and it will slay them, and then He'll set His eye on them for evil and not for good. So this is a complete, total destruction. You remember when we look back to chapter 7, the first two visions. I was telling you there that Yahweh listened to Amos and said, I'm not going to destroy the nation by locusts, or a consuming fire. It's going to be a whole lot worse. Those were okay. Yahweh said, okay, well, I'll listen to you on that, but it's not going to get any better. It's going to be way worse than any fire or I could say some locust horde that would come against them. This is Yahweh using, ultimately the way it plays out in history is that God is going to use an enemy nation to destroy Israel here, and we know that these events happened in 722, when the Assyrians took Samaria and destroyed and took everyone away captive into the Assyrian Empire, and that all came about in about 722. So this nation only lasted like from 931 to 722, just a little over 200 years. That's all it lasted. So then Yahweh called for the covenant curses, to remove, the northern 10 tribes from their land. Okay, so moving along here, when we come here to verses 5 and 6, you can note now that Yahweh is no longer speaking. And now he is presented in a third-person perspective. So this constitutes this, this hymnic doxology of judgment, and it's speaking of Yahweh in terms of that He's the Creator, and that will be obvious here from the statements that are made in verses 5 and 6, that only the Creator could be doing the works that Yahweh does here. And so it begins here with a tristic, and the first verset here is an epithet of Yahweh's titles. So it begins here, and the Lord Yehovah of hosts. So we're talking about the Lord Yehovah of hosts, and so this would definitely be speaking of Yahweh's heavenly, that He's in control of the heavenly armies, which in this perspective would be thinking by and large as the as the stars. These are the heavenly hosts, or make up the part of it in terms of creation. And then we have the works of Yahweh, the one who touches the earth and it melts. And some people would like to translate here this as to quiver. Excuse me. And then there's the third verset, and all of the inhabitants in it mourn. And so because if Yahweh then touches the earth and it melts, well then surely all of its inhabitants, both human and otherwise, are going to mourn. And then there is an analogy here, a simile. All of it goes up as the Nile. So this is speaking of the earth. And it sinks as the Nile of Egypt. So we saw this previously, earlier back in chapter 6 here. We saw that, or chapter 7 it was maybe. We dealt with this, and this is just referring. Remember that the Nile River, is annually inundated by the monsoon weather that occurs at the equator, because that is where the Nile River begins. Lake Victoria, which sits on the equator. That is the White Nile, and then the Blue Nile is also equatorial. It's within the tropics. It goes into Ethiopia, and is heavily inundated. So the Nile River annually it floods, and so it swells, and then towards the end of the year, towards May, then all that water is depleted, and then the Nile River would sink. There's water in it year round, but there is this annual inundating, the high rise of the Nile is somewhere, I think, around August or something like that. And this is so most people refer to this here maybe in terms of an earthquake. This is how they're looking at this. The land is going up and down, and like the Nile would rise and fall. So that would definitely speak of the earthquake. And since the editors of Amos's works, in the editorial superscription, verse 1, in the very first verse of his prophetic works, they tell us that his prophecies occurred 2 years before the earthquake. So this is probably what this is referring to, and most scholars would go along with that. Now when we come to verse 6, it says, the one who builds his steps, literally, most scholars would, the one who builds his upper stories in the heavens, and then it says, and his agudato. Most scholars are just going to say, and his heavenly dome, or it's referring to the firmament, and if you want to just put in the word firmament, and his firmament, he founded it upon the earth. That is basically what this text here is saying, and that is it's definitely it's being founded. Its foundation is on the earth. So that's very important about this agudato. So the dome is founded upon the earth. Now that should tell you, oh my gosh, the implications for this is mind blowing. We'll look at this in terms of some other ancient Jewish interpreters, how they understood this. In the first century and AD, as well as prior to that, and then it continues on. The one who calls for the waters of the seas and pours them out on the face of the land, Yahweh is his name. So we started with the epithet, and then we end here with Yahweh's epithet. So this is an inclusio that nicely brings this to a close. But this is definitely going to then is to reinforce what is said here, what Yahweh will do. That when he, after they, he tells them to strike the capital in order that the thresholds may shake, and strike them on the heads of all of them, and then it says, and I will follow up and kill with the sword. I mean, basically, I'll follow them up and kill the rest with the sword. That's basically what is being said in this particular versette here, in verse 1. And then everything else is talking about in these conditional clauses beginning in verses 2 to 4. If they dig down to Sheol, from there my hand shall take them. If they arise into heaven, from there I shall bring them down. So this is all in a first-person perspective. This is so verses 5 and 6 here are going to reinforce that there is the inescapability of anyone who tries to flee or who tries to survive. They are going to be finished off, and as well as even those who go into captivity, Yahweh is still going to set his eye on them for evil and not for good. Okay, then coming here, we're looking at Rabbi Eliezer here in Pirkei, his chapters here, and this is his work here on creation, and so this is during the Mishnaic period. This is very, very early, and scholars would recognize that, and so this this would definitely be first century or just before, and he says the following: Kirkose Hashemayim b'meimei okianos heim achozim. So we'll stop there. This says the clasps of heaven, they take hold on the waters of the ocean. Okay, so that this here is taken right out of Greek, and is transliterated back into Hebrew. So the clasps of heaven is a metaphor for, you got to go back to the whole topic on the tabernacle, the Mishkan, okay, in Exodus, and it talks there that when he gave Moses instructions for the construction of the tabernacle, that they were to attach the curtains of the tabernacle so it would be one, and they are attached by means of clasps. So what Rabbi Eliezer's doing, he's looking at the creation as the tabernacle is a microcosm of the universe, is essentially what he's saying. So the clasp of heaven, these are, this is just like the clasp of the curtains of the tent. And you're going to see how he gets, when he comes down here, he's going to, then he's going to quote Isaiah, chapter, 40, verse 22 here. So this is going to be great. You're going to love this, man. Okay, so Kirkose Hashemayim B'meimei Okianos Heim Ahozim. Shememe Okianos Omedin Bein Ketzot Hashemayim Uvein Ketzot Haaretz. We'll translate this. Whose waters of the ocean stand between the ends of the heavens and between the ends of the earth. Okay, so remember, creation is just as creation in the Bible is you have the heavens, okay, above, and you have then the earth that stands in and out of the water, okay, and the curtains, and it says there back in Genesis that Yahweh called the Rakia Shemayim. He called the firmament heaven. Okay, so the clasp of heaven, these are the clasps of the firmament. They take hold on the waters of the ocean. Okay, so he's just saying that we live inside of a tent, and that's what Isaiah says. And the tent is the firmament, or this agudato that Amos is referring to here, the dome. Okay, and it's in the dome. Remember, it's founded what? It's founded upon the earth right here, and his agudato, all eretz yesada. He founded it, the agudato, the firmament, basically the dome, upon the earth. It's very, very, very important. You really got to understand all this, and then you're going to understand that Rabbi Eliezer, he understood this long time ago. Okay, and he had put together biblical cosmology very well, and he'll be followed up by Josephus. Okay, in the ends of the heaven, they take hold upon the waters of the ocean, whose waters of the ocean are between the ends of the earth and between the ends of the heaven. And the ends of the heaven, they are spread out above the waters of the ocean. As it is said, the one who lays beams in the waters of his upper chambers. Now get this, Tochan, their midst, their midst, meaning the midst of the heaven, okay, their midst, the middle part of the heavens goes upward. So this is the middle part of the heavens is right here. It goes up. It goes upward. So it's the firmament here is the top part here, okay, as a ball. So it would, or an arc. It's talking about when you look at the blue sky, it forms like a bubble above us, attached to the earth. Okay, it is as a tent spread out. Its ends are downward. Now get this. Okay, it is as a tent spread out. Its ends are downwards. This is the end part, okay, of the heavens. The end part here is where it's founded upon the earth. It goes downward, and it's attached to the earth. That's what he's saying. It's like a tent, Okay, like you go inside of a tent, and the tent is attached to the ground, and the middle part of it goes upward. This is what he's talking about here. Oh my gosh, Rabbi Eliezer, I mean, just hits a home run. And its midst are upward, and all of the sons of men dwell under it. So, we all live inside of this dome here. So this is what he's saying. So he's quoting Isaiah here. This is awesome. Just as the heavens, their ends are downward, okay, attached to the earth, and their midst are upward. That's up here. It's up. It's forming like a ball or a circle, a half circle, okay. As a tent, as it is said, he spread them out as a tent to dwell in. So this is Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22, and this is where we all live. We live inside of this tent. Same thing that David in Psalm 19 said, that he pitched a tent for the sun. So the sun is inside of this dome. So you have the sun here, and you've got the moon, and then you got all the stars in here, and everything's inside of this. The creation of the universe in the biblical text is totally, it's as wide as the earth is wide, and we have it goes upward as it goes up, but it's attached to the ends of the earth, and that's what Yahweh made. That's what Genesis 1 says. You never knew that, because all our minds were made spaghetti by by NASA, but truly, biblical, cosmology is depicted right here by an early rabbi, and understood exactly what the biblical text said, understood what Isaiah said. We all live inside of this tent. Inside of it is the sun, moon, and stars, and we all live inside of this. And I love the Kirkosei Hashemayim, the clasps of heaven. They take hold on Bememe Okeanos, upon the waters of the ocean. You just gotta love it. Okay, so now we're coming here then to Josephus. And he comes towards the end of the first century. And remember that Josephus is a priest. And so his views are going to hold a lot of weight. And he already knew what Rabbi Eliezer had already said. So on his comments here, on the second day of creation, Meta de Tuta, after this, on the second of the days, he placed heaven over the whole, or over the rest, when, having separated it, that is the heavens or the firmament, from the rest, and he deemed to partition it by itself, both having pitched up to it crystal, and having artistically made it harmonious to the earth for moisture and for rains, and for the benefit of dews. So what he's saying here is that he placed heaven over the whole. This is the second day. He said, let there be a rakia, and let it be a divider of the waters, right? And divide the waters in half. So half of the waters went above and half of the waters went below. And then when Ezekiel said he saw the firmament stretched out above the heads of the cherubim, it was like terrible crystal. So he goes here to say that, he placed, the heaven or the firmament above the rest of creation on day 2, when he separated it, that is the heavens, from the rest, and he deemed to partition it by itself, having pitched up to it, that is to the heavens or the firmament, crystal. and then harmoniously made it, and having made it artistically harmonious to the earth. So now that the crystalline firmament now is now fitted to the earth. Exactly what Rabbi Eliezer was saying. The clasp of heaven took hold on the waters of the sea. And so he adds a little bit here from Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 20. I think it's 22 or 23. So anyhow, so what I'm just saying is that, this is the earliest interpretation we have of the cosmos. The firmament comes down and it attaches itself to the earth. The heavens are above us. The universe is as wide as where the firmament comes down. No wonder you're not allowed to, visit the outer rim of the earth, what they call, Antarctica. Because that's where they're studying the blue ice. Okay, this has been another session of biblical theology, exegesis, and hermeneutics, where meaning is always driven by the context. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing here. And, I know that some of this is very, very challenging for some of you, but, I'm sticking with biblical cosmology and the testimony of Scripture, it's tripartite: the heavens, the earth, and the seas.